Hi, I'm Ryder Haske, and this is the People's TV Podcast.
What really matters in the film, what you have to think about the whole way through is the audience at the end, the people that need to hear this story, and you're fighting for them to be in that room so that they can have the access to that moment, so that they can be there when Adi shares that testimony, for example.
That's our very own Nicholas Bruckman, founder of People's TV and director of our new film, Not Going Quietly. On this episode, we talk about the filmmaking process and what we learned along the way from activist Adi Barkan. If you didn't catch the film in theaters, it'll be available starting October 5th on streaming platforms. Thanks for tuning in. So, Nick, I wanted to check in with you about your film, Not Going Quietly. Now that it's actually gone through the full life cycle, not nearly the full life cycle, but it's sort of reached exit velocity, so to speak, and is out into theaters and out into the world. People are seeing it, real audiences are seeing it, not just friends and families and editors and executive producers and stuff. And I know that, we started this whole podcast with our first day on the road with Adi Barkan. So how are you feeling right now? What's going on with the film?
Yeah, thanks, Ryder. It's been an incredible journey that I never could have expected to end where we are today. And in so many ways, there's so many challenges and pitfalls that we came along the road making this film. ALS, Adi's disease, not being the least of them by any means. Adi's health and the outcomes that he's had were never assured. The impact that he's had on the world certainly wasn't assured. Our ability to complete this film wasn't assured. Our ability to get anybody out in the world to see it wasn't assured. We certainly didn't know there was going to be a global pandemic in the middle of making it that would require us all to split from our offices kind of overnight, basically, and recalibrate the entire post-production process, and of course, recalibrate the entire marketing and distribution to get the film out during this crazy time. So I think we're very lucky on many fronts, and it was a mix of foresight and a great team, yourself included, and many others that made this possible. There's no way we could have known how things would have transpired when we were sitting on that RV doing our first podcast, or things at the company and how they've evolved since that time, only, I guess, 3 years ago now from today.
What did it take? I know obviously there was a million things that it took, but can you really distill it down to was this a matter of grit and determination? Was this a matter of just the fact that, Adi's stardom was so bright? Or, how much can you attribute to, those things versus, maybe just the filmmaking process and following, what you've learned over the years?
Sure. Well, I think most of the grit and determination has been on Adi's part, so I give him the credit for that. He asks in the film, what are you willing to give? He's willing to give his last breath for this movement. And so I think the entire way I thought about that line, what am I willing to give and how hard are we going to fight for this thing? And if Adi was going to keep fighting with every obstacle in his way, I don't think there's any way we could have given up. So he led the way in the grit department. But I think there were a lot of things involved, really having an amazing team and framework to make this film. The People's TV backing of it, all the people at the company really contributed in different ways. Yourself, Amanda, Nick Trenum, Claudia, Jordan, Aster. This is not just my project. This was all of ours. And I'm very lucky that we've been able to build the kind of infrastructure to tell stories. I couldn't have done this on my own. And the same way Adi probably couldn't have launched this movement without Liz and the Be a Hero team behind him. So it takes a village to make a film and to change the world, and never doubt that a small group of committed people can change it. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Hey, that's true. So obviously with every project you do, you learn a little something. And for this one, I'm sure there was a lot of lessons, but talk about some of them that come to mind now, thinking about what's happening recently with the film on the sort of distribution front, thinking about what you're learning by working with the editor, all of these different scenes, process stuff, what kind of stands out to you as a filmmaker as your takeaways and learnings from the film?
Yeah, there are many all the way through the process. have to think about where to begin. Certainly, it started a long time ago, learning how to work with Adi, learning how to be in his life, learning how to wield these dual roles of working with the Be a Hero movement as a storytelling partner, but then also going behind the scenes with Adi to make this film. I learned a lot at every step of the way. I learned a lot from Adi. I learned a lot from the other people who worked on the film. There are some things that I think, in retrospect, I would have done differently, but I'm also very happy with the conclusion that we've landed on, which is that we've secured real distributors. And I've been emphasizing this a lot as we've been talking, but I think the people in the most important thing for making a film like this is to build the team around you of people that really believe in you and believe in the subject matter and are willing to support you and go through all of the ups and downs that we went through on this project, of which there were many. That includes the people at the company I mentioned earlier. That includes Bradley Whitford and Mark and Jay Duplass and the people at Patma Productions and Park Pictures who all came in on this. It includes organizations like IFP and Film Independent and HBO, who gave us grants, IDA, Rooftop Films. Really couldn't have done it without all of those people coming in to contribute. And so I think the most important thing in filmmaking is relationships and sharing your vision and treating people well so that they come back and go slog it out with you. There were a lot of long days and long nights making this, and it wasn't a huge budget project. It was always a fight on that side as well. And had to tussle with Adi himself about the story and getting this made in the way that we wanted to make it. And I think that yielded the best outcome. And we had to push a lot of people. We had to push to be in those offices with the politicians. We had to push the doctors to be in those hospitals. A lot of those things seemed to just unfold naturally, but there was a lot of producing that went behind that access that we had to be in the rooms with the activists, to be in the halls of Congress. We didn't just walk into that hearing. We fought to be in there and explain to them that this matters, and we enlisted other people's support to get ourselves into those rooms. And when you watch it, it's like, oh wow, it feels so intimate. But that's why. It's because of that fight for access and this belief that what really matters in the film, what you have to think about the whole way through, is the audience at the end, the people that need to hear this story, and you're fighting for them to be in that room so that they can have the access to that moment, so that they can be there when Adi shares that testimony, for example. I felt it was just so important to bring the world into that room at that historic moment, and we weren't going to let anybody tell us no to be in there. And so for access is the big thing, and that's requires that grit and determination that you talked about. It requires relationships. It requires articulating a vision, and requires fighting really hard, sometimes with people who understand what you want to do, but they don't know what it takes, and they don't know why it matters so much, and they're concerned about, well, what about this person in the room, or what's this person going to think? And you have to really say, well, 2 years from now, we're going to be in a movie theater, and people are going to experience this moment, and it's going to change their lives. And people have told us that. I've gotten a lot of messages and seen Instagram posts from people I know and people I don't that told me this movie changed their life, which is really meaningful for me to hear, and it validates all of the fights that we had to fight. And we learned a lot of that from Adi. Adi didn't take no for an answer from anybody the entire way. He certainly didn't take ALS for an answer. So that was the spirit with which we produced this movie.
Of the things, like the tools in the toolbox to get a film made, what are your favorite few tools when it comes to, like you said, convincing people to take you seriously and building those relationships and articulating a vision? What ended up being the most effective strategy for getting the Duplass brothers involved and all this other attention from funders and grants? How do you make those happen? I mean, I know a lot of filmmakers are dying to figure out what are the cheat codes, but I don't know if there is, or what you think is the best strategy.
Yeah, I mean, none of that was easy, and winning the partnership of those folks involved or getting that access. So even though it may seem in retrospect whoa, all these people just piled on, it wasn't. It was a lot of negotiation, a lot of fighting, a lot of rejection. For every grant and partner that you see on the screen or in the credits, there was 5 or 10 no's. Beyond that, there was people who said, well, this is a great story, but I don't think we really want to watch something about some guy who's dying or is sick. It's too much of a bummer. It sounds educational, but not something that I'd want to put my money into or support and see. So So certainly don't give up or think that the people who have gotten some of those recognitions or partnerships or buy-ins from people did it just have some kind of miraculous ability to secure that. It was just a lot of perseverance. But in terms of tips and tricks, I do think that it's important to tailor the message to the audience, and I'll give different examples of that. For example, in terms of working with the Duplass brothers, we knew that they have an amazing record with documentary and, of course, are well known for their narrative and comedy movies, and I knew their sensibilities. And so when we flew out to meet them, I really knew their work, and I cut together what I really thought was the kind of most kind of wry, dark comedy moments of this film, of which there are many. I think people are always surprised by how funny this movie is when they see the fighting for healthcare or ALS. It doesn't seem like it's a comedy, but really it's like a road movie with a bunch of young people taking this guy on his last road trip, fighting for justice during the day, and then getting high and barbecuing and eating s'mores at night, like we all do on with our friends. And it's a really, I think, enjoyable and relatable experience for young people who see this movie. And so those are the scenes that we showed the Duplass brothers to subvert their expectations of what it would be. Not to say that they didn't understand the social justice elements of it as well, but we wanted to really tailor the message to them to see how it fit within their spectrum of work and their canon. And that was effective because they loved those beats that we had in our footage. And we didn't lead with that social storytelling first. Conversely, with other organizations, we tailored our deck and our pitch and our scene selection to them. So you have to really know your audience, and it's a lot more work, right? You've got to write a different treatment and a different grant application and a different proposal for every audience. But that's, I think, important because people have different stakes and stories, even if at the end they all come together and form one thing. So that's one piece of advice.
So strong pitch decks, good writing and communication skills, tailoring to your audience, building those relationships over time, and, hopefully through all those things, it sort of forces them to take you serious.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm real, I'm not going to stop. And just like Adi, just knocking on every door and willing it into being.
Yeah, I mean, we really knocked on every door. I mean, we applied to all the markets and places to pitch films, and we got the list of who would be there, and we emailed every single person that would attend that we thought might possibly, and 10% of them responded, and 10% of those and 1% of the total came through and sat down with us for a meeting, and some of those people ended up signing on to the movie. So it was a lot of that pavement pounding, which we learned from the organizers in the film. That's what they do to get those votes out, is to leave no stone unturned. So that was very inspirational to me, watching them do the work. It was really mirrored, I think, that organizing tactics were really mirrored in how we got this out. And it's still what we're doing today in terms of trying to get communities to come out and see the film and partner with those organizations to bring their constituents out. So that's a really, I think, important lesson to take away from the film for filmmakers and artists in general.
And all the while, when you're doing those pitches and everything, you still don't have a complete movie. Right? It's still up here.
Yeah.
So talk about this part of it, which I look at this board and it just like immediately induces anxiety. But
yeah,
I don't know.
We moved these pins around a lot for over a year. And then we just eventually gave up and left them as is. I actually think what's on the board behind us is pretty close to the final cut of the movie. I can see a couple of scenes that got cut, but this is pretty much the script of the film in its final iteration. But it had every other version of it, and every color on the wall here represents a different character or scene. And there's digital versions of this as well. There's probably 1,000 pages of transcripts, of which we used 17 lines from Adi, in the film total. And I was in here for a year with Amanda and with Kent, writing and rewriting, with Martha Shane, who helped us on the writing. And I think maybe another lesson in this is that the writing, not just for the grants and development, which is really important, as you mentioned, but also documentary writing is really part of the craft. You don't just turn the cameras on and follow. And much of the narrative of Adi's story, even though it follows a relatively linear framework of his life, is is crafted and written like a screenplay. And we did that with real footage and real interviews. But we had to follow some of the traditional structures. And that is certainly not made easier by the fact that you don't know what's actually going to happen, and you don't know whether you've got it or your character is losing his voice, so you can't even get the lines that you need because he can never speak again. That was definitely a unique challenge on this project. But I think watching other great movies is important, and learning from other documentaries and standing on the shoulders of other people who've made stuff before. But we really weren't afraid to craft the narrative that was what has been called like the higher truth. Much of the film is put together in our own order, was constructed in post using snippets of audio that we created later, that we put together using graphics that we used to tell the narrative. But I think it stays true to the spirit of what happened. If it was just a collection of footage, it wouldn't have that kind of like driving cinematic narrative quality that I hope the movie has. So I think it's important for filmmakers to really own the story and feel empowered to rewrite the rules with as long as you're aiming for that higher truth of empowering the people that gave you access to their lives and furthering their mission, which I hope this film does.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those traditional storytelling techniques in there, like foreshadowing and cutting between, the future and the present, and just leaving scenes with a bit of a cliffhanger or building momentum through montages. These are all kind of known techniques that apply across any sort of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But just to build on what you're saying about constructing those scenes, as a cinematographer for documentaries, something that stands out to me in this project, and I guess anything long form over when you're making a 2-minute piece or something smaller, is that you really got to just keep at your 100% best no matter what the scene in front of you actually is, because you never know what that moment is that's actually going to be the opening to the film.
Yeah.
Because I remember looking, at the very beginning of this movie and thinking like, geez, I never would have thought our opening shot is this like random time I hit record and all right, I think I've got it right, but I've already been shooting for 6 hours, and you at a certain point after shooting hundreds and hundreds of hours, you never think about how important one particular scene could be, but then it ends up with such a big, imprint on the actual final product. So
Totally.
Definitely a big takeaway for me to keep
rolling.
It's
true. It starts with documentary, it starts in the field with getting that verite and getting all that material, and you kept the cameras rolling a lot here, and that's what all of this is made out of. So I think that from a documentary perspective, the kind of stuff that I like to watch is always feels like you're watching a narrative or a fiction film, and the way you do that is by being in the room, which is about that access that we talked about, but it's also about keeping the cameras rolling and about about assuming that every shot might be the one, as you said. That I think we did that successfully, and sometimes we knew. I think when you were filming Anna Maria and Adi in the halls of Congress, that was a moment where you're like, yeah, this is going in the movie. There's a lot of other ones where I thought we shot amazing stuff that didn't make it, and then there's, some establishing shot of some place that we didn't shoot and had to go back and reshoot later because we forgot to do it, So it's like, the more the better. I mean, we shot, I think, about 300 hours plus a lot of archival for this. I've heard of ratios that are much higher. I've heard of like 1,000 hours of shooting. But you can't have too much. We had a really good kind of distributed network for making this film, and we kept the gears rolling. I live in New York, Adi lives in Santa Barbara, so a lot of the time when Adi would go to the doctor and we thought it would be important, we would kind of dispatch a local DP with a set of instructions and some kind of prompting or framing questions and stuff, and that helped us be always present to see the story unfold.
And that's with like just a one-man band or just some context that you've met with them before, but really they're doing everything. No sound operator. They're just fly on the wall, and that actually was stuff that made it into the film as well.
Yeah, there's plenty of one-man band stuff in the film. A lot of one-man band stuff from me shooting, staying in the garage in Audie's house, for a week, because it was really hard to get them to sit down for a dinner and shoot that and be there with a crew. Kind of just had to be there and let it happen or capture it every time. So there was some definitely a lot of fly on the wall stuff and a lot of that kind of just patient posting up stuff. Audie writing his book, you see in the film, is this excruciating process where he's dictating these last words of this book with what's left of his voice, and that took weeks, and I shot probably a week of it for hours a day, and it ended up being a beat in the film. But it was actually hard to find the beat that we needed that was clear and encapsulated the whole time period. So I don't really think we overshot. I think we had kind of exactly what we needed.
Yeah, and I think that comes to, even if we didn't have the vision for the entire arc of the movie at that point, it's about knowing the, life story of Audie. And it may not be the pivotal moment, but there's going to be these series of pivotal moments over this course of time. And it's that intuition of like, I need to overshoot this moment because I'll probably want 16 versions to choose from, and that pushes the overall quality of the film. I mean, how many times were you looking at the edit and thinking like, damn, I wish I could have used that, but I couldn't because the audio was messed up, or something else was causing a reason to not use it, and you just, for the audience's sake, you couldn't,
Yeah, that happened a lot. Not as much for technical reasons, because I think the audience is forgiving of that stuff, and there's a lot of the movie that's kind of out of focus and has flaws that I think people forgive in this kind of movie. But there was a lot of stuff that hit the cutting room floor for narrative reasons. The film really had to have this kind of funny, sad arc, for lack of a better word, where hopefully you're alternately laughing and crying at different moments. And so that meant that if two funny things happened at the same time, we could have had to pick one, and if two sad things happened in a similar time frame, we had to pick one. And even if it was way funnier than something that happened later. And I think Kent, the editor, did an amazing job of weaving that delicate balance between the two. But it would have been great if we had a longer canvas to paint on. There is a blooper reel on our Twitter, which is worth checking out if you're a true fan.
Yeah, I know. I have so many good blooper reel moments that, I just have fond memories of, and I always like talking about when we do Q&As and stuff. So fast forwarding to now, and of course we had this massive delay because of COVID. Was that in some ways kind of a benefit to the quality of the film? Because we had this initial release, and then you ended up cutting for another 6 months. Did you feel like that actually pushed the quality significantly forward?
Yeah, I think it was ultimately beneficial. I mean, it was obviously really difficult and traumatic for the whole world, and continues to be. We were slated to premiere at Tribeca 2020. Audie had his ticket booked to fly to New York, which would have been really incredible. And I think he was the first to see the writing on the wall, considering his health. This is March, saying, I'm not sure if this is really a great idea. And then South by Southwest canceled, and then Tribeca sent us the email, and everybody, and there were bigger problems in the world at that time that we could really be too upset about our indie documentary. Of course we were.
Yeah.
And we just had no idea. Nobody knew what was going to happen at that time. So we just kept going. We all packed up our computers here and went remote and continued editing over Vimeo and Google Docs and digital version of these cards that we didn't see again for a year. And just kind of frozen in time here now that we're back, seeing these as we left it when we fled before the end of the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, we kept cutting through that whole year. We added elements of the story of the work Audie did later. We ended up premiering at the South by Southwest Film Festival in March, which was a virtual festival, but it was still a fantastic experience, and the movie was really well received and won a jury prize and the audience award. Tribeca gave us this great gift of rescreening the film, or screening it for the first time outdoors, where we got to celebrate with a lot of the activists in the film and had a message from Audie, so we still got to have that New York Tribeca experience that I wanted. And most importantly, I think that the film is more relevant now. There was this idea in 2020, this film must come out to help be part of the movement to defeat Donald Trump, which of course Adi did all on his own without the movie, and along with many others. And now the movie is about this idea of not just winning elections, which Adi helps do not once but twice, and then holding politicians accountable to the promises they make, to the demands of their constituents, and holding their feet to the fire and shaming them when they ignore us. And that's the work that Adi is doing now. That's the work that's ahead of us in having a Democratic White House and Congress by a thin majority, of course, retaining that, but also using and leveraging that to actually enact policies like Medicare for All that we can win if we can make them listen to us. So I feel like now it's a kind of more hopeful time than it was then, and that's what this movie is about. And I feel like things worked out in their very twisty and turny way to help bring Adi's story to people at the moment where they needed it. And thankfully, Adi's still here, and we had this amazing celebration with him on Thursday night at the red carpet in Los Angeles and the Hollywood press there. And he rolled up and got a big standing ovation, which was something I promised him 3.5 years ago, half jokingly, because I wasn't really sure that it was going to be on the cards for so many reasons. But here we are, and I'm just very grateful to everybody who helped me come through on that promise.
I mean, it's such a monumental occasion, and oh God, yeah, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about how exciting it is overall, and such a milestone, you know, in your filmmaking career as well, to have that big like Hollywood premiere. What was that moment like for you? Like, were you in your own head about it, or were you fully experiencing it? Like, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I was I didn't really get to like have a moment with Adi there. That's something that was kind of like, you know, I kind of wanted to like give him a hug and be like, we did it, man. But there was like too many people around, and we were like trying to get him positioned for the Q&A. And so I still feel like him and I haven't had like a proper toast to this. So that's something that it was kind of, you know, logistically a lot going on at that. And we're like trying to get the mics ready and stuff. Yeah. But I did get to watch him watch it, and I think, you know, we've talked by text and email, and I you know, his family has really told me that this means a lot to him. And neither Adi nor I are like particularly sentimental, you know. He's just like, all right, cool, let's use this thing and let's fight for a better world for my kids and for all of us.
Just
you know?
What's next?
Yeah, exactly. So you know, and we're on calls trying to plan for the marketing and distribution and leveraging his presence and stuff like that. So it wasn't like you know, that tear jerking moment. It was this like, all right, we did it. Let's go. Exactly. What's next?
I feel like that's the attitude you got to have, you know, to be committed to this for a lifetime. I mean, obviously it's a kind of a career affirming moment, but it shows that you're not just in it for like the one, like, okay, check that off the list. I don't need to make films anymore. It's like you're like, you know, already thinking about all the steps that still need to happen.
Definitely.
And I don't know, talk about a little bit of that. I mean, I know the theatrical is complicated now, and then what is coming next?
Yeah, that's what we were really focused on. I think everything about the premiere was, you know, not a pat on the back. It was this launch pad to do the hard work that's next of organizing the marketing and distribution for the film. All independent film marketing and distribution is really hard. This film is not any easier because of its subject matter. I think once people come into the theater and see the kind of joy and humanity and humor of this piece, they tell their friends and spread the word. But before that, you might think, oh, do I want to spend my Friday night with this, you know, terrible disease? And is this what I want to see? So we have to kind of combat that by getting people to come and care about this and care about Adi. And once we do, then we've got them hooked, and that word of mouth spreads from there. And so we're got great distribution partners on board. We're working with Greenwich Entertainment on the theatrical release. Vice is doing the international release, which we will announce soon. And PBS is going to air it in January. So we have all of those great partners that are going to use their platforms to get it to people, but it still requires that guerrilla organizing grassroots principles of knocking on doors to get people to see it. And so we're doing that work with Be a Hero. We're doing that work with the Center for Popular Democracy. We're going to show it at, which is where Adi works. We're going to do it as at colleges and universities and film festivals, and the People's TV team is cranking out graphics and social media and all the stuff to keep the word going around. On October 5th, it's going to be released for purchase and rental on iTunes and Amazon and cable VOD, as well as a DVD and Blu-ray. So we're going to get people excited about seeing it that way until it's ultimately broadcast on PBS. But it requires, and I think for all films that are not Marvel or global Netflix shows, it requires a lot of hustle, as it has all the way through. And so that's why the premiere was just step 6 of 17 to what we think will be done. And I think once there'll be a time where we really feel like we and all of our partners have done the work to get this out, and we hope that it will spread organically, but we have several more months ahead of us, perhaps longer.
Yeah, and it just feels like even since the very beginning, there's like false peak after false peak. You just keep climbing this mountain, you think, oh, okay, I did it. But, like you're saying at the premiere, like you hardly have time to stop and celebrate because the next peak is looking down at you, and you got to just keep climbing up it if you want it to be, reaching the actual, final summit, which who knows what that really even is. I mean, I guess it gets a little bit like, theoretical at that point, or
it's a good question. I mean, I think that's like a philosophical one. Yeah. Like what, it's important, I think, to another lesson in here from Adi is like we're all gonna die. Adi's maybe working on that faster than the rest of us, but we're all only here for so long, and we have to make the best of the time we have. And right now, I feel like for amongst the other work and projects and storytelling we're doing, that this is the best way I could have spent the last 3.5 years, and that will continue to be for a while. And I want people to be aware of his work, and I think this film is going to be hopefully a large part of that. And the more we can do in that vein and pass the torch to other filmmakers like we're doing in this conversation to tell important stories and move on. And we're developing new projects here at People's TV that will hopefully also change the world and make people have more empathy and care for each other, and all the things that Adi believes in. And I'm just really grateful that we were able to do this with him and for him and in partnership with him.
Yeah, that makes it, it's like such a responsibility, because I think anyone who makes a biopic has this on them, that they're really trying to channel themselves, their storytelling as a filmmaker through this person, through this individual who's like a real person, and they are complex and messy humans like the rest of us. So it's that
literally messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that is true, and that is a responsibility that I still feel in the work that we're doing here. And I think Adi actually has a way, and his condition calls us all to a place of attentiveness and clarity and purpose, which I feel in a way that's a responsibility, but it's also a real gift that he gives to the people around him, to Liz and the Be a Hero team, that what he's experiencing and the way he's used it shows us a path for how to spend our time and to make the most of our time. And so, yes, I felt like, fuck, I've got to do this for Adi. I've got to make this good. I've got to get this movie out. But I'm also feel like he gave me this clear assignment, and there was just never a doubt at any time, like whether I would complete it or whether there was something better I could be doing, or like, how should I be, which I know a lot of people experience. And so I hope that the film has that effect on other people, whatever it is that they're choosing to do, that it gives them Adi made meaning out of this disease, so other people can hopefully make meaning and find purpose in the challenges that they have, maybe turn those challenges into tools in the way Adi has to or turn them into a hammer, as Adi says, to build a better world.
Yeah, and I think it's a great lesson for anyone who attempts anything similar that's like about, someone who's gained some notoriety, which is that you're probably not the only person who's like going to try to do this. And you can be irresponsible in your pursuit of that, And I think in a way, Adi is very lucky to have you, and that you followed through for it, because I'm sure that there's, others who may have started and wanted to incorporate his story into something else, or, he wouldn't have had the same kind of, person who was in it for the long haul and give it the level of exposure that it now has, So kudos to you on sticking it out.
Thank you. Yeah, see what he says. I think he's happy with the job I did. We butted heads a little bit. He asked me a couple weeks ago if I could change something, and I said no, because we already delivered. But I think he feels the same way, and we haven't had that heart to heart since it's come out. We've just been focused on the work, and yeah.
Do you feel like it's like something that's really changed you? I mean, that's a tough question, but like, is there like a before the film and after the film in terms of how you like approached life and your creativity or your career?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's very fundamental things, and it's a work in progress. It's not like I'm changed, but Adi, I think, very naturally calls for other people to think about gratitude and appreciation for their lives, for themselves, for the people around them, for their communities, for their health. And if they don't have that, it calls you to think about, the ways in which you can overcome that, or the ways you can make meaning out of that. And so in my case, I have tried to really focus on that gratitude practice and learn that from him and from this process. These are, I don't know if you mean like as a filmmaker or as like a human being, but
both, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, he said the experience has had a very personal effect on me, and there's been big changes in my personal and family life during the time of making this film. That I had a baby boy. My son is around the same age that Adi's son was when he was diagnosed, and so it's a very kind of poignant moment for me to think about how I would deal with these cards if they were dealt to me now, about the same age as Adi is. So those have been some of the personal impacts he's had on me, and I think they've all been really positive. But sometimes it's still hard to think about what he's going through, and it's still bittersweet even in this victory. I'm glad we were able to tell his story. I'd more appreciate somebody who can go out there and cure ALS.
Yeah, well, we need more of those people, and no, it's a good point. And I think that as filmmakers, sometimes when you are so deep into the story and thinking about the edits and how it's working narratively and all that stuff, you can get a little bit desensitized, especially after seeing it so many times in different versions of the cut. You're just focused on, the craft, and then you hear people's reactions to it, and they're crying and they're laughing and they're having such a visceral, emotional reaction.
Yeah, which is awesome, of course, to chase you out of that callousness and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've had some version of watching it when you were like in the right headspace to like fully feel emotional?
Seeing it at the premiere in LA was really awesome because it was a packed house and just kind of like applause mid-film and everything. So that shook me out a little bit out of that experience. But generally I try not to, or I feel that films don't change the world. I think that films can impact the people who do and can be a tool that they can use to do that work. And so I don't always feel like I've got the wherewithal to do the world-changing work myself, but I can maybe craft a hammer to hand over to them, and that would be the best contribution I feel like this film could have made and that I could have made. I do think it's one of the most important things, or maybe the most important thing I've done in my life up until now, and I'm just really happy that people are getting to see that, and I'm happy to get some recognition alongside that, but the work is up to everybody.
Amazing. And so just to end it out, what do you have next? Like what do you feel like, you want to do after this and take on to future projects, and how you think about filmmaking, how you want to evolve as a filmmaker, what you want to do differently, what you want to do the same, how you want to evolve and just shape your next project?
Yeah, well, I'm very much focused on, to this point, about giving people the tools to further their advocacy and activism and democracy building and human rights and social justice. I'm really working on kind of scaling our team and my storytelling skills as a company so that we can serve more of those organizations and activists that are doing the work in the field. I think we have a lot to offer as a team to folks like Be a Hero, but also to Black Lives Matter and Greenpeace and the Nature Conservancy and the dozens of clients that we have who are doing that work of actually changing the world, but need stories to show the people and to inspire people to donate to them and to rally and to show up and to bird dog and all of the things that our clients do. And so I'm focused on that and taking the learnings from this film, which is having a big impact to our other partners and to the short form work that we do. And additionally, at People's TV, we're developing more feature-length film and TV projects that I'm really excited about, and focusing, of course, on the marketing and distribution for Not Going Quietly. So those will be what I'm doing, along with taking my baby to the playground, which I just did for the first time last week, and it was
Amazing.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
You're doing all of this high-level thinking about movement building and tools for partners and how we can do great storytelling that, helps continue the conversation in the right direction at a very high level, up in, the clouds, like this big picture planning. Yeah. But at the same time, you're tweaking the graphic that goes out to the distributor for
right.
the next screening or the social media post or whatever it is. So it's these really high level thinking combined with like making sure that you're still executing on the work, deliverable by deliverable. No task is really too small, and of course that's the role of a director of getting into the nitty gritty, but also having the big picture. So
yeah, well, they say that like George Lucas would go around and tell every scenic painter like how to do the brush and like which color for the miniature, and go and like correct the makeup artist who was doing the Ewoks and retouch the costumes for the Jabberwockies or whatever. And I'm not, I think, that much of a micromanager, I hope, but I do think it's important for filmmakers to really understand the crafts of the different departments and to appreciate them. Going back to that teamwork, everybody who worked on this has really played an incredibly important contribution, from the cinematography to the animation to the accounting and the understanding the insurance and the boring stuff of producing. You can't always outsource that completely. You need to know all of the intricacies of it and treat those people well and get them to see your vision, as we discussed. So I do think that is a big part of it, and there's a very long list of credits in this movie of people who brought this together, and so I'm trying to make sure to acknowledge those folks while basking in the final glow of this coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Navigate all those relationships with kindness, with respect, and have that determination to see it all the way through, and you've got a good movie.
Not Going Quietly. It's in theaters.
In theaters now. Check it out. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Ryder. It was a great conversation. And I'll see you next time on the People's TV podcast.
All right. Thanks, everybody.